Hello, everyone. My name is Javier Ortiz. I am your mentor throughout this program, Data Engineering Nano Degree. Welcome to week number 4. And this webinar, I'll provide a walkthrough of project number 2, which is data modeling with Apache Cassandra. First, let's get started with some reminders. Okay, let me share the Slack channel with you guys. Just remind everybody that DEND session I63 is a Slack channel where our study group resides, and that if you have any question, if you have something to share, something you think might be helpful for other students, or you want to ask a query, this is the place to do so. Each week I provide a weekly roundup where you can see all the lessons that we have due that week and all the events scheduled for that specific week, including the link to our webinar, all right? And the link to schedule the one-on-one meetings with me, all right? So with that being said, let's get started with today's webinar. And in today's webinar, I'll go over project number 2. All right, so let me close this and let's get started. Awesome. Okay, so project number 2 is data modeling with Apache Cassandra. Once again, you're going to be a startup called Sparkify. It's a music streaming app. And basically, this startup holds all its information, its data in CSV files. So what we would like to do is take that data and load it into a database for to make it easier to query that data and analyze it. So by this point now, you should be familiar with what an ETL pipeline is. Basically, we're going to extract the CSV files. We're going to transform them and then load the data into our own database. That's what is meant with an ETL pipeline. And let's get into the details of the project. Now, the CSV files, they have this type sort of file path, I'm sorry. And basically what we're going to do, we're going to extract the information from these CSVs and load them into our database. So we have several steps over here and about how to model your NoSQL databases and build the ETL pipeline. But basically, this can be summarized into follow the Jupyter notebook provided. All right, so let's just go straight to the Jupyter notebook provided over here. All right, so here you're provided with a workspace. Your workspace should look like this. If it doesn't look like this, you can click here on this left lower corner where it says menu, reset data. You type here reset data and it will provide a brand new workspace for you that should look like this, right? Now, here you have the DEND data, which is the CSV files I was talking about. And here you have the Jupyter notebook. All right, now let's open the Jupyter notebook and here we'll find the part 1 and part 2 of the project. So part 1 is the ETL pipeline for pre-processing the files. Basically what we want to do, we want to take all the files that we have here and create, here you have like 10, 15, I don't know, let's open it actually. Okay, you have this number of CSV files. Basically what we want to do, we want to extract all the data from those files into a single file that we'll use to extract the data into our database. All right, so let's start by importing the packages that we're going to use. Right. Here what we do is we create a list of file paths to process original event CSV data files. Basically, we get all the file paths that we need. And we process the files to create the data file CSV that we use for Apache Cassandra tables right here. So this piece of code, it has lots of descriptions. So I suggest you read them carefully so that you can understand the code, but you don't need to do anything with it. It's already written for you. And basically what it's going to do is going to open each of the CSV files and is going to read them line by line and create and append those lines into a single CSV file. So once you run it, you should have a new file that would appear right here in any second now. Oh, here it is. All right, here we have the file, and you can read it, the number of rows that it has, and it should have 6,821 rows. So at this point, so far, all I'm doing is running the different boxes. All right, let's continue with it. Okay. So that's part one, which is the ETL pipeline. It basically is going to load all the CSV files into one CSV file. Now let's move on to the Apache Cassandra coding portion of the project. Now the CSV looks like this point. It has all these different columns that they have listed over here. And what we're going to do, we're going to begin writing the Apache Cassandra code by creating the cluster. Once again, this piece of code is already written for you, so you can just run it. And let's start with the create space. Now the create space, you already established a session over here. So you can use the session.execute to execute your queries and your different piece of code. So here we start with the create key space. Okay, and in case you don't remember how to do this, let me open another classroom. You can remind yourself how to do this by going into lesson number 4. So basically, right away in the first demo, the teacher shows you how to create and set the key space. So in case you don't remember how to do that, that is a good place to remember. Okay, so I'm not going to do this because that's code that you can that you know or that you can remember from watching the lesson. So basically create the key space. And then here the key space, you're going to name your database as you wish. So something along the lines of music app, songs database. So you decide the name, right? And here session.set key space. Once again, this is already written for you here in the lesson, so you can just see it. And here I'm going to just set the key space to the songs database. All right. So don't forget to do these two things first: create a key space and set the key space according to the name that you specified here at the key space. All right, I'm not going to do it. You know how to do it now. Okay. Now let's continue. Now we're going to create the tables to run the following queries. Remember that in Apache Cassandra, we start out with what sort of queries do you want to answer, and we create a table for each one of those queries. So we have 3 queries. So I have a file save error, but it doesn't matter. I'm not going to run the different cells, so it doesn't matter. All right, so we're going to create 3 tables, one for each query. Now in this part, it's really important that you write down the queries, the SQL queries that you're going to model your tables after. So let's go one by one. I'm just going to solve the first one for you guys to give you an idea of what to do. Now in this query says, give me the artist, song title, and song's length in the music app history that was heard during session ID equals 338 and item in session equals 4. All right, so right here, I'm going to write the SQL query. It's going to start as all SQL queries, select. Here you have the option of selecting everything or just selecting the specific things you're looking for. Watch the wording of the query. For example, this one says give me the, and it seems like each of these these are going to be the entirety of the table, so I can just select everything. For this one, it says, give me only the following. So watch the wording of the queries. So I'm going to select everything from, and then here you're going to specify the name of your table. You decide the name. Just make the name sensitive and sensible, and just take into consideration that it has to start with letters, and you have to use underscores. Make it easy to remember. For example, right here, music app history by sessions. It can be like session history or something that makes sense. All right. And here we're going to specify a where, because we know for sure we're going to partition our data by session ID and by item in session. So I'm going to write a where statement that says session ID equals 338 and item in session equals 4. All right. And that is going to be my, oh, maybe because I have this open, I don't know. All right. And this is going to be my SQL query where I'm going to model my table after this SQL query. So you have to do the same for each of this. Let's go really quickly over number 2 and over number 3. Now, number 2 is tell us, is give me only the following: name of artist, song sorted by item and session, and user first and last name for user ID, session ID. So here we know that we're going to partition our data by user ID and session ID. So these are going to be part of your where statement. And we usually in SQL would sort by using the order by, but we don't do that with Apache Cassandra. We're going to include this in the primary key as a cluster column to order our data. All right. But that is just something for you to consider. Don't write the order by in the query. Just write the where statements, and these will be taken care of when we create the table. All right? So just something for you to remember. And let's continue. Now, number 3 says, give me every username, first and last name in my music app history who listened to the song All Hands Against His Own. So this clearly will be part of the where statement, and you have to return the first name and the last name. All right. So write your queries, name them with a name that makes sense, and don't forget to write the query right here underneath each number. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so to do query number 1, given the artist, song's title, song's length, and music app history was heard during session ID 338, and item in session number 4. Okay, so what I like to do first and foremost is write down every column that my table needs to have in order for this query to give me the result, fetch me the result that I want. All right. So for sure, since I'm partitioning my data by session ID and item in session, I need those in my table. So it will have a session ID, it will have an item in session. That's for sure. Now, I will also need the artist, because that's really what I'm interested in. So artist name, song title, it can be song, or you can name it song title. You decide your names. I'm really sorry about this. I don't know what is happening, the error in the server. Song's length, I'm just going to name it length. And I think that's it. Artist, song title, song's length, and that's basically it. Awesome. So I need that I know these are going to be the columns of my table. So once I have that, I can write my query to create the table, right? So create table, if not exist, and you decide the name of the table. Actually, you already decided the name of the table here in the query. I named mine session history, so you need to keep that name, all right? Session history. All right. Now, since I already established the columns that I need, I'm just going to write them right here. Okay, so I'm going to start with session ID and let's specify the data type. Now, remember that these are going to be populated from the CSV file that we already made, okay? And you have a picture of that CSV right here. So for example, for session ID, I can see that that value is an integer, okay? So I can write here int or bar int, both work, so it's up to you guys. And then item in session, and let's look what sort of data types you have. And we see that it's an int, so let's use an int or bar int. Then we go with artist name. So artist name, and we see that that is for sure text. So I'm going to just write it as text. Then song title, just to make sure, but it needs to be a text. Songs right here. Song title is going to be text. If you run out of space, you can just write the backslash and continue right here. Okay, and then the length, let's see what sort of data type is it. And length, it's a float, so I'm going to write here float. All right, and now it's time to define our primary keys. So primary key, and in this case, since I already know that I need to partition my data by session ID and item in session, those are going to become my primary keys. So I'm going to write session ID and item in session. All right, and that's it. This is my query. So just remember that tip. If you have written a where statement, whatever you have in your where statement, most likely that is going to be your primary key. All right, and basically what you have to do is just run the query to create a table, and that's it. That's the first part of creating the table. All right, now once you have created the table, what you have to do, you have to populate the table, okay, with an insert statement. So what we're doing here, we're opening the file that we created and we're reading line by line. And for each line, we're going to run the query that we're going to write over here, and we're going to assign the values to what we decide over here. So let me show you how to do that. So right here, it's really simple. We write the insert statement that we already know. Insert into, don't forget the name table, session history. Okay, insert into session history. And we're going to write here the different columns. We have session ID, we have item in session, we have artist name, song title, and length. All right, so this is what we're looking for. And here we're going to assign the values. So values, and here I'm just going to place one of this for each of the columns, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Really important that you leave a space even after this statement or before this one. All right, so that you have like a joint block. All right, so now that you've written your insert in statement and your values, what we're going to do, we're going to run this query, and here the values, what we're going to pass into it is line. So what does line mean? So here, as you can see, we're reading the file and we're reading it line by line. So what line means is basically is a list of all the values that we have here in the CSV file. All right. So when you index that value, you're going to decide the column, the value of that column. So if I index line for 0, I get this value. If I index it by 1, by 2, by 3, by 4, so on and so forth, all right? So what we need to do is basically see this data where in the line it resides. Okay, so let's start by session ID. And session ID is in column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to write number 8. Now, since I want it to be an integer, I'm going to write int. Okay. And for the ones that I need them to be text, I'm just going to leave them like that. So item in session, let's see what number is it, 0, 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be column number 3. And I'm going to write here number 3. And once again, I want it to be an int. All right, let's continue with artist name. Artist name is right here, column 0. So I'm going to write line 0. Then I want the song title, and that is in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm going to write line index 9. And finally, I want the length. Length is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember that this is a float, so I'm going to write it as float and line 5. All right, now this will populate my database. All right, so this is really simple, but it can be kind of tricky. All right, so once we run this block of code, what we're going to do, we're going to do a select to verify the data have been inserted into each table. So basically what we want to do, we want to run the SQL query that we already wrote. You can just copy it from here. All right. And you can just try session, execute, then the query, and accept, exception, E, print E. And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to write the results I get from the query here at rows. And I'm going to loop over that for row in rows. And here I'm just going to print. So what this is going to do, all the results that this query gets is going to write them like in many rows, and I'm going to go row by row printing the data that I ask it to print. So row dot, and I want I do want to print the session ID, even though it's not required from the original query. As you see, it just says given the artist, song title, song's length. But I'm going to print it just to make sure that that it actually partitioned my data by session ID 338 and item is session number 4. All right. So session ID and then row dot item in session and then row dot artist name and row dot song title and row dot length. Okay, so if you run this query, it's to give you all the results that you're looking for that meet this specification of the where statement. And that's basically the first part, the first table. I kind of already wrote it for you, but I'm not going to write number 2 and number 3. That's for you guys to do it. I'm just going to give you some tips. So once again, first write your SQL query and start by writing what columns would you need, okay, in order to make that query work. Now for this, for number 2, you have a sorted by. remember that in Apache Cassandra, you don't want to write the order by in the SQL query. What you want to do is you want to add this in your primary key, all right? So that it's going to partition data by your where statement, but it's going to sort it by this clustering column. So remember to add this in the primary key. Apart from that, it's pretty simple. Once you copy this code, and you insert the values into the property table, and here just select the lines according to the different columns. Okay, make sure they match the order that you have in this CSV file, and then just run the SQL query to make sure you are actually fetching the results that were asked from you. So that's query number 2. And for query number 3, you want the user first name and last name in a music app history who listened to the song All Hands Against His Own. So this clearly is going to be the where statement, where song equals all hands against his own. So that usually that would be your primary key. However, you cannot make song the primary key. Why? Because a primary key needs to be unique. If you make this song the primary key, only one user will be able to listen to the song, okay? And that's not what you want in your database, all right? So you need to make the song along with something else your primary key, okay? So primary key is going to be the song plus what? Maybe the user first name. If it's the first name, then you can only have one John listening to that song, or one Natalie listening to that song. If it's the last name and the song, you can only have one Smith listening to that song, or one Williams listening to that song. So you need to make something unique to the user, but that together with the song plus that is going to be your primary key. Okay, so think of something and include that in your primary key. All right, and now after you've gone over those steps, here what you do, you only write the drop statement, so session.execute, and then you can write straight here drop table, and you just write the name of the tables. And you're going to write one statement for each of the 3 tables, so 3 statements in total. And then you run this to close the session and the cluster connection, and that's it. You are done with it. Okay, so it's a smaller project, and the hardest part by far is writing the queries and making sure your primary keys are set correctly. All right, so be very mindful about that and make sure your lines, your indexes align with the correct order here in the CSV file. Apart from that, let's open the rubric just to see if there is anything that we need. And here just basically that we have created a new file, that we've wrote the create statements, that you should include a property table, not use allow filtering to generate the results, should use table names that reflect the query and the result will generate. The sequence in the columns should reflect the partition in the data. So just write the columns that will be your primary data first. And the combination of partition key and clustering columns should be appropriately to uniquely identify each row. More specifically with table number 3, which is a tricky one. Node should include a description of the query, the data's model after. So that's basically saying, don't forget to write the SQL query. Right in the beginning of part 2 where it says query 1, query 2, query 3, just write down underneath each of those the SQL query. And should be organized well into different queries. Any inline comments that were clearly part of the project instructions should be removed. Okay, so basically remove everything that were instructions from the project. And that's it. Here you can add a description of your primary key, how you arrived to that decision, and you can use Panda data frames to add columns to your query output. So just some recommendations to make your project stand up. But the basics of the project, that's it. All right, so good luck with your project. Remember, it's due this Tuesday, April 30th. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask through the Slack channel. All right, and I'm here for you in case you need any help. I'm going to hold an AMA session next Monday. So you can actually it's going to be Monday at 12, I think. And that's basically it. All right. And let me know how your project submits go. And that's it. Have a great learning week, and we'll keep in touch. Thank you very much. Bye.